Again, big thank you to everyone who came out. Just want everyone to be mindful that we are speaking on a topic that can be a bit of a hot button issue for some people. So just being respectful of other people's beliefs, and that way we can move forward in the best manner throughout the event. And I have bios for all of you, but I would rather, have you guys just kind of introduce yourselves, talk a bit about the work that you do, or kind of what brought you to Missoula, and so that way everyone can get to know you a bit. Again, I'm here, my name is Missoula Cox, I'm the Racial Justice Program Coordinator at the YWCA, and this event is a part of our Stand Against Racism campaign. It will be the 13th year that the campaign has been going through the YWCA nationally. And this year's topic is immigration justice. So we partnered with the International Rescue Committee and Montana for Immigrant Justice to bring together a panel discussion on immigration justice because, as I'm sure a lot of us are aware, immigration justice is racial justice. And in the current climate that we're in, which I'm sure we'll talk a bit about, it's very important that we protect the most vulnerable in our community and make sure that we are uplifting them and helping with that advocacy. And there'll be some action items presented for everyone here at the end as well, so we can get you guys engaged. And please check out the tabling and find ways to volunteer and get engaged with all of the organizations present today. And thank you again for coming. And we will start it off. If you want to just introduce yourself and
I'm Sandra. I work at the bar. I'm here with my husband and my children. I'm from Congo.
I'm Justin. I'm from DRC. I'm here with my family, 3 kids and my wife. I work at MPSC. Thank you.
My name is Joel Kambale. I've been here since September 2016. Among the first families to be settled here in Missoula. I work with the IRC as a Swahili interpreter. I work with the MDRC as caregiver. And I'm also a co-founder for a new church called the Universal Revival Church. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. It's an amazing endeavor. What time do you meet? 11 to 1?
Yeah. 1 to 4.
1? Oh, 1 to 3, I'm sorry, at the public house.
Yes.
My name is Bob Gentry. I'm an attorney here in town. I practice in public interest, environmental, immigration, and civil rights law. And my practice incorporates environmental issues for folks that are trying to protect the environment and combat climate change. I work with immigration clients individually and through the Montana for Immigrant Justice, which is a partner with International Rescue Committee and many others, in trying to educate the public regarding immigrant rights and individuals who are at risk. They should know their rights in encounters with law enforcement, and we work hard to try to get that word out. And in civil rights, I also represent nonviolent civil disobedient protesters in various encounters with authority. And I've been in private practice since about 2007. And before that, I worked for the state, working on Fork River cleanup for a number of years. So, pleased to be here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Holkline, and I'm on the staff at University Congregational Church. I also work for the Paparello Center. The views I expressed tonight are mostly my own. And also, I'm on the Leadership Collective for Montanans for Immigrant Justice. And I'll talk a little bit more about MIJ as the evening continues. I'm a fifth-generation Montanan, a descendant of immigrants. That's a complicated story, which I'm also looking forward to sharing more with you tonight. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Barilli, and I'm the Resettlement Director for the International Rescue Committee. We are the refugee resettlement agency here in Missoula, and I'll talk more about that a little later. I'm a social worker, and I've been a social worker for almost 15 years or so here in Missoula, working with various populations. When I was in graduate school, I actually did a practicum placement at the YWCA, working with survivors of domestic and sexual violence. I had a great opportunity there as an advocate at the Y, with the Pathways program. So I'm just excited to be here. Thank you, Michelle, for inviting me and IRC to participate.
So I have some questions prepared for the night, but of course I want questions to come from all of the participants and audience members here tonight. So if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and we'll get you up there, and we'll have you come and answer or ask your question, and that way we can pose it to the panelists here. So I think my first question, though, to kind of just get to know you guys a little bit more, is what is at the heart of the immigration issue for you? And kind of when you talk about that, feel free to kind of talk about your own personal stories, what brought you to the work that you're in now, what kind of is your heart speak, what makes you feel like it's necessary to get up on the stage and share these types of experiences, or the advocacy work that you do. And on top of that, those here with your organizations, speak a little bit more about your organizations, what you guys do.
Okay, according to me, I'm so happy again to be here part of this program. I'm here now in Montana, it's like now 9 months. And then it's very difficult, to leave your country and then to be in another country. It's very difficult thing. To leave families, friends, and relatives is very difficult. At first, I thought like maybe I'll be the only black in this city. And then I thought like maybe it would be the biggest challenge for me. I won't be having like jobs and doing other things. I was very scared to do everything. When I started work at St. Pat, I tried to check. I didn't have even the time for me to have like food or maybe to hang out with friends. It's very difficult. But I tried my best. I found Missoula people, Montana people, they are so supportive. They support me, and they gave me that challenge, and they gave me the opportunity again to feel like I'm home again. So I thank you very much for everything, whatever I'm going through. Yeah, according to the immigration, the people, the only thing that we want to have is that you're having like the most challenge is like maybe for social security. We are having difficulty, like people are coming for refugees now. They are coming so that maybe our YRC people, they are working so hard to having like jobs. But it's very difficult for having job, and then the social security is taking more time. It's taking more time for them to have like social security to come out. You find in the family you have like 5 children. All the children they have social security. To their children, to children it's not so necessary like us adults because we're supposed to work. Yeah. So that is the only biggest challenge that we are facing. Yeah. And then according to the second thing that you want to say is about green card. If it could be better, they can do like maybe they try to work hard, they look after us. Even we are coming, I think so they know about our situation, and then we are working. We have a lot of things that we want to go through, and then people they can't be so interested with us. They say that we have nothing that you can tell that we are a refugee. So we are trying to ask for the people who can help us to have those green cards. Maybe like if it can take maybe 1 year, it's not very big issue, so that they can learn about our situation and to know about us. Thank you very much.
Also, my wife was already tell the country which I was planning to tell. But of course, becoming here when it was new come, its life is very hard, it's very difficult. We didn't feel that we can find my brother already here because he was the one who came before us. And when I saw you already here, I was very happy. say we found families, we found friends, and he started showing the way where you can just pass. That was very good for us. But according to the population of Missoula or Montana, we just say thank you, but there is some certain problems I was finding when I was taking the bus. Please let me tell the words, please. We just found in the bus where we are sitting, other white people, if he's coming, he cannot sit together with you. That was paining me every time, and I was not happy with that. Of course, there is other people who can just sit, but just like to sit on the bus instead of to sit down together with you. That was the one point I was just sorry for the people, but I didn't know why. It was because they didn't want to stay, or I don't know. That's all the point. Can I say just according to the second point, I just want to ask for the immigration which is here. Please, we want to change our status. And the way we change our status is through the immigration way we was passing. We was being interviewed. We get some interview from our countries where we came from. And those interviews which we did, we just want to follow every processes, and if it will be as soon as possible, we get our most of paper, which is important, and that's why we could change that status which they are calling as refugees, because it's pain in your life when you will be still calling refugees. Sometimes it's painless. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you again for having that opportunity to talk about my story. I've been in many panels trying to say the same things, and we'll repeat again today. As I said in the beginning, among those first families which were seated in 2016. And as the first families when you came here, it was a big challenge. As he said, my colleague here, there was questions when you were riding the bus, questions like, who brought you here? Why did you come here? Such questions. You can find that when you are sitting on the seat, there is someone near you. He decided to stand up in the bus, standing up, instead sitting together. But you see, those challenges, I called those five families, called them just try to organize a play so that we can talk to Missoulian people. We make a play by it has a theme like if one ran away because of war they are in. That war that play tries to explain the process from the camp to USA, how it came. After the play, we saw that some questions ended. We didn't all the major questions like how guys did you, who brought you here? Why did you come here? Such questions. And we did that play plays a big role to Missoula to build the population. That was the first thing. Because maybe our kids, I really wanted to one school where my daughter was always beaten by someone. I wanted them to say, why my daughter always come from school crying? What? Say, no, that one, once he met him, he beat me. I ran to tell the teacher. The teacher said, no, just forgive him to end. Even tomorrow, he found me, beat me. So he was always coming back home crying. So I went to the school. I talked to the headmaster, the principal, and they say that ended. So that's what he said according to immigration issues. as when we applied for green card, the first family, we pay the money to see the doctor. And the office is at Helena, very far. So maybe if they can move the office from Helena to Missoula, it will be good, because when the refugees in Missoula, but in Helena there is no refugees. To travel from Missoula to Helena is very far. No traveling with the kids, because all the families must go to Helena. Traveling with the kids get tired. Go and come, go come. You can't go one time, you can go about 3 or 2 times. So maybe that it would be good to have a migration office in Missoula. We still fighting because such country trying to tell people that refugees also they are human beings. We didn't decide to be refugees, but we didn't know why and when for us to become refugees. When we were born, we didn't know that we would be coming to USA. Through the struggle which we had in the camps, that's when the UNHCR can try to found some countries to ask them for help, so that refugees can be helped. So my voice is this: when the refugees came here, it's like they are coming from a fire, a burning house. So it's good to put them as persons. They are also persons, they are also human beings. They didn't do anything for them to be refugees. But you know the politics. People are fighting. They say when the elephants fight, is the leaves who suffers. We are innocent to be refugees. And when you come home to USA, we need also respect. We need also respect. And we need kids to be safe at school, everywhere they go. That's what we need. And that's with that idea, that's what I even thought to begin as a congregation, so that there may have some advice, may always advise the kids, the parents, to be united, to be connected to our culture. Because someone is isolated, it's hard to come back. But although someone can have a problem when he comes to a family, in a group, we can give some advices, and that can end. Because you can see all the refugees, they have a trauma. Like me, I've been a refugee camp for 20 years. Struggle in a place like 7 kilometers square, staying there for 20 years. I was only going out for studies. Maybe I go to take up a syllabus in a town and come back in 2 days. You are just given a pass for 2 days. Go, after days you must be back. So now all that, it remains stuck in the brain. So in a way, we come out to USA, we wish to be now safe. We wish that to forget all the past, so that we are calling to the community to know that also us, we are not criminals, because others they are feeling that those they are criminals, they can kill people, they can do something wrong in the community. No, it's not that. Before us to come here, immigration, the officers from the immigration always go there, discipline our cases from our countries to the second country. That's when we can now be given the mandate to come here, the passport to come here to USA. You can't come like this. The immigration officers come from USA, go to screen your case from your country up to second country. So be free to meet refugees, they are not criminals. Thank you very much.
Hi, how I came to immigration law. I grew up in Arkansas. My mother was a teacher and professor. My father was first a Methodist minister and then a philosophy professor. And in 1959, they moved to Little Rock, Arkansas. And probably most of you know that there were some interesting things going on in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1959 and in the years thereafter. My parents were part of an ecumenical civil rights activist group in Little Rock, and not only did they help provide shelter to folks who needed it, they also helped to process civil rights activists that were coming through Arkansas, going to places like Mississippi and Alabama, Louisiana. And I remember Dad, one of the first things he told me about was, what was that like, Dad? I mean, it must have been amazing to have all these young people coming through and you're advising. Well, I tell them, have plenty of food and water, make sure at least 3 different people know where you are at all time, have some money for a payphone. You know, there weren't cell phones at that point in time. And 4th, don't go. Those people are mean down there. And they are ideologically xenophobic and racist to a depth that you have no conception of. But they insisted on going, so I did my best to try to prepare them for this. And so, throughout my young life, I had some good examples in my parents and in their friends. And even though I grew up in Arkansas, it was a very broad and liberal education that I received there. And experiential education, because I got to see racism in a southern town up close and personal. And so I ended up in biology in undergrad, then did a graduate degree in avian ecology, and through that I got to travel and work in Mexico 3 times, in Puerto Rico twice, in Belize, in Guatemala, and I was following birds, our migrant birds down there, to see the impacts on habitat fragmentation on their winter range, and then following them back to the United States to see what habitat fragmentation was doing on their breeding grounds, and what is causing this steep decline in these indicator species, these important ecological indicators of ecological health, and where is it happening? And my work still focuses on environmental work and the integrity of complex ecosystems, which are so terribly important right now, from the lungs of the planet, in our hemisphere, in the Brazilian Amazon, to the taiga forests of the Arctic, to even places like the extraordinary Big Bend protected area national park and protected areas on the Mexico side, which absolutely need to be an international peace park and be joined together rather than having a nonsense wall go through that area. But nonetheless, I got through grad school and decided that I needed to learn the language of law. I was reading Endangered Species Act regulations, and they're onion skin paper in a book this big, and realizing I really like this. I'm kind of strange that way, but I ended up going to law school to learn the language of law, not necessarily practice law. But coming out of law school, I got a job in environmental enforcement, and then a job that brought me to Montana, and worked on the Clark Fork River cleanup, and we got a big settlement from Arco BP for that, and then went into private practice and sued ExxonMobil in my first case in private practice on the megaloads that were coming through Missoula. And during that time, I'd been training myself. I'd done immigration law in law school and was interested in it. And I saw it was touching on more and more things. And in Montana at the time, there were, 3 practicing immigration attorneys. 3 for the entire state. Now there are 5, believe it or not, with me and Randall Cottle. Randall describes it this way. He just moved here last year, and He's here in Missoula. He's one of my colleagues, one of our colleagues with Montanans for Immigrant Justice. We are super lucky to have him here. He ran a 6-person law firm in San Francisco, which is one of 40 immigration-specific law firms in San Francisco alone, in California. If that gives you an idea of how underserved the immigrant population in Montana was and continues to be. And so, I've got some disparity in my work from, maybe disparity, from environmental to civil rights to immigration, but I don't see it that way. These intersect, and they intersect every day in all the work that I do, and so that's what's brought me to immigration work, and also the fact that there is so much criminal ignorance in our world about immigration law, and about how people come to the United States and how people come to be citizens of this country. And that criminal ignorance feeds xenophobia and racism. We're in a time, I wanted to hold off on this a little bit, we're in a time of crisis. Crisis of leadership, crisis of governance, and a crisis in the very rule of law. And it is my responsibility as an officer of the court, which all attorneys are, to uphold the rule of law and the Constitution, and to protect those in our society that are most vulnerable. And so, from my position of privilege as a white Southerner growing up, to now still a position of privilege, of course, I want to do what I can in that position to help. And so, that's where I am.
I came to working with Montanans for Immigrant Justice and to immigration work and immigrants' rights work, I think first and foremost through my faith. I'm a pastor in the United Church of Christ and also the daughter of a United Methodist minister. I was born up in Kalispell, but the way the United Methodist Church works is that they move us around. And so I was an outsider for most of my childhood in these little tiny towns in Montana. And I did not experience racism. I did not experience the kind of discrimination that we're talking about tonight, but I did get a feel of not fitting in. The other thing that brings me to this work is certainly my faith. One of my mentors said a long time ago to me, her name was Joan Maruskin, she worked on the East Coast, I think in Pennsylvania and New York, in detention centers that house thousands of immigrants. In the late 90s and early 2000s, this has been going on for a long time. And Joan said, the Bible is our best immigration manual. Whether you're a person of Judeo-Christian faith or not, the Bible has a lot to say that's quite consistent about how we are to treat strangers and anybody we see as a foreigner. And that is to treat them as if they're our family. Because most of us have sojourned somewhere at some point. And that's really foundational for me. Montanans for Immigrant Justice began to rumble a little during the 2016 presidential campaign because we heard what was being said by the current president. And folks here in Missoula were pretty sure that immigrants in our community and across the country were going to be targeted, and we wanted to do something about that. So this small group of folks kept meeting, kept building our network, and now we love to be invited to places like this. We are really fortunate to work with some really great attorneys and to have a wonderful connection with Joelle and with IRC and Soft Landing here in Missoula. We want to bust myths about immigrants and immigration. We want to share Know Your Rights training. This is a time when it's important for everybody to know our rights, and definitely for folks who are vulnerable, folks who are more likely to get pulled over by police, immigrants in our communities whose homes are more likely to get a knock on the door. We want people to know that everybody has civil rights and to know and be able to stand up for those. So that's some of what Montanans for Immigrant Justice does. We've got a Facebook page. We invite you to join that. We post lots of articles, hopefully more positive than negative. We try not to spread fear and to really stand together as a community. I'm also sitting here because we weren't able to get one of our more recent immigrants in our community to fill this seat. So I want to acknowledge that. that Montana's for Immigrant Justice really works hard to get folks who have direct experience with these issues in these seats. That was not able to happen tonight, but we continue to work to build our network and to support people with direct experience to share their experiences and to share what they're concerned about.
I think I'll share a little bit about myself and kind of how I came to just social justice work in general. So I grew up as a Jewish person, a Jewish girl in New York, and I think that experience, just that personal experience of experiencing discrimination because of my cultural background, religion, definitely got me interested at an early age in social justice issues. And, you know, went to undergrad with a women's studies major, just really passionate about helping people that were maybe more vulnerable or whose voices were not as often heard. And then I got the really great opportunity when I was moved to Missoula and I did grad school here in social work, and Janet Finn, a professor at the School of Social Work, who some of you might know, started a class called Social Justice on the U.S.-Mexico border, and some of us went down to the border to meet individuals being directly affected by U.S. immigration policy. That was a very powerful experience for me. These were folks who had recently been deported, who had maybe lived in the U.S. Most of their lives, but did not have documents, and were dropped at the border with nothing and nowhere to go. I also, for a while here in Montana, worked for the Montana Migrant Council, which is now called the Ag Workers Council, in Dillon, Montana, and Flathead Lake, and I was working with mostly migrant agricultural farm workers, the majority of whom were from Mexico, and just getting to know these people as well. Many of them were here on agricultural visas because the community of Dillon cannot find anyone to do that agricultural work at all. So, you know, that's just an example of immigrants filling needed positions in this country, but in Montana as well. And you can see that even the work that I do with the refugee population. Joelle's wife, Justine, works at the Holiday Inn Missoula, and the Holiday Inn will tell you this is the first time in 15 or 16 years that they've filled all of the housekeeping positions that they need. And Justine has been promoted recently, so shout out to Justine. But so I guess I've always had this, you know, personal passion for social justice and racial justice issues. And as a social worker, when the IRC opened its doors in 2016, I was really excited to be able to do social justice work and blend that with racial justice. And I've learned a lot from the experience from the families that we work with. And I do want to just quickly kind of let you know what we do at the IRC to give you some context that might help you understand kind of what Joelle, Justin, and Chanda were sharing a little bit about their challenges. So we're proud to be the only refugee resettlement agency in the state. IRC was the refugee resettlement agency in Missoula in the late 70s to early 90s, resettling mostly Hmong refugees after the Vietnam War. So we're really proud to be back. We are just resettling refugees in Missoula. It's the only community right now. And we provide case management and employment services. So we are picking people up from the airport, finding them housing, getting them jobs, enrolling kids in school, connecting people to health care, and so on. We also do immigration work. So in relation to what my friends were saying at the other end of the panel, some of the challenges with that work, after 1 year, refugees can apply for green cards due to administrative changes and the fact that our administration is diverting a lot of resources away from immigration work. We're seeing significant delays. So of course we're seeing delays in green card applications, and folks who apply for green cards need to go get their fingerprints done in Helena. So that's a little bit of a barrier for folks. As you may know, under the Obama administration, the U.S. as a whole across the country was resettling 110,000 individual refugees across the U.S. And under this current administration, that number has dwindled to 30,000, which is the lowest since 1980. And so, you know, the impact that it's having here in Missoula, we're still resettling families. We're resettling about 100 individuals each year to Missoula. But refugee resettlement agencies across the U.S. are closing. The administration is diverting resources away from the refugee admissions program. That means that, you know, if Joelle, Justin, and Chama have families that were booked for travel to come, they may not get to come. Part of the other immigration work that we do is helping people reunite with their families. So, for example, Joelle may have a family member. We have clients that have spouses or even children that are still overseas that are not here with them. So we assist them in doing that family reunification paperwork, but due to all the administrative challenges and delays, that process is a 3 to 5 year wait, unfortunately. And so we've had families been affected where their loved ones were about to travel, and then the first travel ban occurred, and people weren't allowed to come to the U.S. And what happens is the vetting process that happens overseas, so on average about 2 to 3 years, that involves Homeland Security, CIA, FBI, and multiple other agencies. If someone's ready to travel to the U.S., but then there's a travel ban or a hold, some of those processes will expire and people have to start that process all over again. So I'll just get off my soapbox about. I'll end by saying I think one of the things that I've learned from the families I work with, as my friend Joelle was saying, you know, refugees and most immigrants are some of the world's most vulnerable people. You know, they're fleeing violence. We see from whether it's people coming to Missoula from Africa or Syria or Iraq, or it's our friends on the southern border, you know, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico. People want the best for their families. They want safety. They want security. And it's a shame that our country, the United States, which is one of the wealthier countries in the world, and should be a global leader, is, you know, turning its backs on those vulnerable people.
Alrighty, thank you guys so much for sharing. I'm just going to open it up now. Again, I have like a list of questions, but I'm sure all of them speaking right now just brought some things up for you guys. If you have any questions, just feel free to like blurt it out. Sam and Taylor, anyone? No questions on the story? All right, then I will take one of my phone here. So I guess you were speaking a bit about how the current administration is affecting the work that you do, the policies in place, you know, getting access to green cards, like literal facilities being shut down because of a lack of resources. So I'm just curious about more information on that, ways that, you know, I want to try and get as much action as possible out of this event, right? So in what ways can we, as concerned citizens and community members, you know, people look out, because a lot of these things just happen, right? And we don't really see that they're happening unless you are involved in this area. So a lot of us are not, right? So how do we stay on top of these changes that are happening, and how, you know, is it signing petitions? Is it advocacy work? Is it, you know, writing and calling our senators? And in what ways can we kind of activate people that are here, and we can create a ripple effect to people in our lives, in our community, to be as proactive as possible for a lot of the changes that we are seeing, because, you know, 2020 is next year, and we don't know what's going to happen from there as well. So in what ways can we get activated and be involved in this process as well? And also, what does that look like? You know, you spoke a bit about refugee resettlement, and what does that also look like for non-documented citizens in our community? And how do we support that? And what has that situation looked like here in Missoula specifically?
Could I do a tiny bit of background? I mean, your question is well taken.
Yeah, great.
The questions are well taken, but just to get us all on the same page a little bit.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Just a little
That's
bit of
informational.
Yeah, a little bit of immigration background. I mean, most of you know these things, but as far as immigrant status in the United States, there are basically four broad categories. One would be no status. That's a person who has come into the United States on a non-immigrant visa and overstayed it, stayed past the time they were allowed to be here. The other would be a person who entered without inspection, who came into the U.S. at a place other than a U.S. Customs and Border Protection post. And second status is non-immigrant visa status. We're all familiar with non-immigrant visas. It's a visitor for pleasure, a visitor visa. So you come to the United States, you have a friend from another country, they say, oh, I just want to visit. You apply for this visa, you say, I'm going to stay for 6 months. And Customs and Border Protection says, okay, come on in, enjoy your stay, but you must leave at the end of 6 months or else you'll be out of status. Okay. There are other non-immigrant visas, lots of other ones, but student visas, everybody knows somebody who's a foreign student here. Student visas are granted not for a period of specific number of days, but for duration of status. So that means students have to report into the university, which through the SEVIS program reports to the Homeland Security. If this person is attending their classes, you've always got Homeland Security looking over your shoulder if you're an international student in the United States. And you can maintain that status only by going to classes full load and making reports. Then there's immigrant visa status. We've heard about, folks have already used the term green card. What that means is lawful permanent resident. This is the next step for refugees. After 1 year of being in the United States, they not only can, but are required to adjust status from refugee to lawful permanent resident or green card holder. What that means is green card holders have all the rights and privileges of U.S. citizens except the rights to vote and hold public office and the rights to some means-tested public benefits. And, of course, the final status is citizenship. And in order to get the citizenship, you always have to go through the green card process. And depending on how you got the green card, it could be from 3 to 5 years until you become eligible to naturalize as a U.S. citizen. So, green cards. We hear about family-based. There are several different pathways to get green cards. We hear about family-based quite a bit. This could be somebody who's married to a U.S. citizen or the child or parent of a U.S. citizen. And if you're married to a U.S. citizen or it's a child, not somebody who's under the age of majority, or a parent, then there are no quotas on the number of people that come into the United States on those visas. So we often hear, get in line, get a green card, get in line. What if you're, here's an example. What if you're a U.S. citizen with an unmarried 21-year-old daughter in, say, the Philippines? Well, there are only 24,000 of those visas given a year, and you can make your application and it just gets put at the bottom of the queue. So if you're from the Philippines, then they're processing applications that were filed in August of 1997 right now. So a little bit less than 12 years until they're even going to start processing. If you're from Mexico, it's even worse than that, 95. So for many of these pathways to green cards, there is no line, or the line is 12 years long or 14 years long. And if you're facing difficulty in your home country, if you're facing the prospects of people banging on your door, either killing you or drafting you into military service, and you don't want to carry a gun on behalf of whoever the people are that come and get you, or want to take you into sexual slavery, can you wait 14 years to get in line and get a green card, even if you happen to have a relative in the United States. So there are also some visas that are of particular importance to YWCA, and I know you know about them. They're the U visa, the T visa, and the VAWA visa. With the passage of VAWA in 1994, the Violence Against Women Act, there was created a visa for women who were not citizens, a pathway to a green card, who had suffered domestic abuse at the hands of a U.S. citizen. There are over 19 billion women and girls who are immigrants in the United States right now. And they're a particularly vulnerable population in many ways. They may be working in the service industry, they may be undocumented, they may have bosses and other people or people in the home, whether it's a domestic partner or a husband, who holds their undocumented status over their head. If you don't do this, this, and this, I am reporting you to ICE, and they're going to come and deport you tomorrow. Well, the VAWA visa is called a self-petitioning visa. A person who experiences domestic abuse can themselves apply for this visa, and they can apply for a waiver of all the fees associated with it, which can be $1,500 if you add them all up. And so people should be aware of the VAWA visa, or the T visa. That's victims of human trafficking. It happens a lot. It happens right here in Montana. If you notice, next time you stop at a rest stop on the interstate, check out the hard steel doors with the deadbolt locks on the inside. That's actually a step that the state of Montana has taken to combat human trafficking. Because traffickers have to stop and let their captives use the restroom every once in a while. But if they can get into one of these rest stop restrooms and throw the deadbolt, these doors withstand shotgun blasts. And so that's what those are there for. Look at the rest stops and see the notices about human trafficking. Trafficking is becoming more publicized here in Montana, and it's about time. So this T visa is something that, for a person who escapes trafficking and may come to the Y for shelter. And how did you get here? Well, somebody brought me here to be trafficked into I don't know what, maybe sexual servitude. And a U visa, this is a victim of crime, including witnesses to crime. Too often, the immigrant community is afraid to contact the police. Even if you see crime happening right outside your door, because you may have people in your house or next door or down the street who are out of status. And calling the police, can be tantamount to calling immigration, calling ICE. If you don't trust the police to come and help, and if the police start asking the wrong questions and doing racial profiling and say, we don't think you're a citizen, we're calling ICE. Of course, that's illegal. It's a civil rights violation. Nonetheless, we'll get to that. If you have a community of people that are afraid to report crime or afraid to report the crime that's happened to them, what does that do to the entire community? If you have a bunch of easy victims, what does that draw? Predators. Does it drawing criminal predators to our community make sense in making our community safer for all of us? No, of course not. So the U visa is designed not only to help the immigrant community and help them understand that the police can be their friend, even if you've got a bad cop that says, I'm going to report you to immigration. Go ahead, I got a U visa lined up here now. But it makes us all safer. So, just real quickly, I'll finish up here. There's also asylum and refugee status, and of course Jim and Joel and everybody else can talk a lot more informed manner about refugee status, but asylum is a U.S. legal civil remedy set forth in U.S. law that may be sought by any person and all people applying for asylum anywhere at the U.S.-Mexico border. Once they get into the United States, they arrive at JFK on the plane, all these persons are entitled to due process of law and the other constitutional protections afforded to all persons seeking to enter the United States. When I say constitutional protections, I don't say that lightly. All persons are entitled to constitutional protections under the Bill of Rights, regardless of immigration status. That means Fifth Amendment rights: no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Eighth Amendment: no cruel or unusual punishment shall be inflicted on any person. Is it cruel and unusual to separate parents from children at the border? Is it cruel and unusual to take a person who has applied for asylum under civil laws in the United States and treat them as a criminal and put them in a concentration camp? I'll tell you, yeah. Even the First Amendment speech issues associated with the press, attorneys, and activists on the border who are being increasingly harassed. These are civil rights to which every person is entitled and that are being violated by the current administration more and more and more. Sorry to get to that point. And I'm not talking politics, I'm talking reality here. So, anyway, with that background, your question I thought was really extraordinary. So.
Okay, thank you very much. I wanted to share a bit about asylum. I will share my experience where I'm from. I'm from Tanzania, a refugee camp, as I said, where I stayed for 20 years. So, it's not anyone who can apply for asylum for third country. According to where I was, USA government asking for refugees Congolese who has been in the camp for 20 years. They started those who entered in the camp from 1996, 1997 up to 2000 are those only who have the right to apply for asylum to the third country, so that you can see those who entered in 2001 free up to 16, they are not having that right to apply. It means UNHCR also can check the cases where this one has stayed in a bad situation for 20 years. What is happening to him? It must be anything which give him to fear to go back to his country. So that's when we give you the chance to apply for asylum, so that to be the one of the free durable solution to refugees. Because the refugees has a free durable solution. You can go back to your country. You can get a citizen to the second country, or have the chance to go to the third country, like USA, Australia, Europe. That's the third durable solutions. So, as the USA government, when it came to Tanzania, they gave that condition for those refugees who have been there for a long time. I don't know why. Maybe my boss can add.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, what Joel's talking about are the three durable solutions. So refugees, of course, everyone wants to return home, right? But so the United Nations, or the UN, says, well, that would be the first choice. Let's, remove people from a conflict, and then things die down and they can return home. But when that can't happen, that second option would be, for example, Joel mentioned he was in Tanzania for 20 years in a couple of different refugee camps. A lot of times it's not possible for those countries to absorb the tens or hundreds of thousands of refugees into their country, to be able to give them jobs. So a lot of times refugees are in limbo in that second country, and there's not much of a life there. So the third option of resettlement in a third country. And, to give you a perspective on the numbers, right now in the world there are about 65 million displaced people worldwide. That doesn't even take into account some of the folks that are displaced due to climate change. And about 25 million of those people are refugees worldwide. And it used to be about less than 1% of those refugees worldwide get resettled to a third country, and now that number is probably less than half of a percent. So there are a lot of folks that really need, that aren't able to work, aren't able to make a life for themselves or their children, or they're living in either unsafe conditions or poverty conditions that really need a chance at life. And so that's what the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program does. But unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, resources are being diverted. And so to one of Michelle's questions earlier, I would say, what can you all do about this? And I work for the Refugee Resettlement Agency, so I'll specifically talk about supporting refugees, but of course there are many other things that you can do that maybe my colleagues up here can also share. One is, a couple things are really easy, right? When you see folks that you may recognize that might be in African clothes, and you think maybe they are new members of the community, welcome them. Be a friend, sit with them on the bus, chat with them. If you have children in school, ask them to be a friend to the refugee kiddos. Those are really, simple things to do that go a long way. Also, we have a sign-up sheet on the table over there by the yellow bag, but we train family mentor volunteers, which what that entails is community members can come to a monthly training that IRC holds. You can check our Facebook page for the information on that, but every month we have a training. And once folks get trained, you can be paired up with a refugee or a refugee family that's coming to Missoula to help them adjust to life here. So, our staff and our interns are doing, the case management and employment services, but you can really have the opportunity to be a friend, be an ambassador to the Missoula community, things like that. And that's a great way to just get to know families and really welcome them. But then also, Michelle mentioned, calling legislators, definitely. The president every year on their own, the president gets to decide October 1st every year how many refugees get admitted to the United States. So that's the decision of the president alone, and the president's supposed to consult with Congress, but that did not happen this year. So it is important, especially as we're nearing, summer and fall, to talk to your legislators, I have some postcards that you can grab up there. Feel free to send in postcards, tell your legislators why it's important to bring refugees to our community, why, we think it's important in Missoula to do so. And Joelle and I are actually going to be in D.C. in May meeting with our legislators and chatting with them about resettlement and why it's important for Montana. So if you want, you can, on our Facebook page, you can print postcards, but I have some on the table. We'd love to, you can send them in, but we'd love to deliver them in person to our legislators when we're there. We'll be there May 7th through 9th. So we'd encourage you to write some postcards too. Also, I would say other ways to just support and welcome refugees but other immigrants is, if you own a house or have an Airbnb available, open a home, rent to a refugee family. We all know how hard housing is in this town, and discrimination does occur. It's kind of hard to prove. So, if you are an employer and you need workers, hire an immigrant. I know at IRC we have an employment specialist that's a liaison that can help employers kind of navigate maybe taking on someone that's new to the culture or the language. So we're there to assist. I think I'll wrap up there maybe, but there's lots of ways to get involved. If you want, you can follow on Facebook and we'll have, we have action alerts and things like that that you can sign up for via text where we'll put the word out when there's maybe an urgent issue at hand and we need your support.
Well, I just want to start by saying what hasn't been said yet, which is that U.S. immigration and refugee policy is very much based on U.S. attitudes about race. Some of our very first immigration laws were anti-Chinese immigration laws, and then have continued. The quotas for visas, the countries from which refugees are accepted, we could make some very interesting charts about who gets accepted into this country from where, and how dark their skin is and how light their skin is. So I think it's very important to be very honest about that when we're talking about immigration and race. That our country has a long, long history of racial bias and prejudice and discrimination and pain, and that our immigration policy is also part of that story. Here in Missoula, the stories that I know about, especially folks who don't have legal status, we've heard from some workers on construction sites here in town who've been subject to some very ugly discriminatory graffiti in the, those temporary outhouses on the work site. Because those workers are not documented, they don't want to say anything to their employer. As an ally, I rely on those folks to say whether they want other people to do anything about that or not. And the message has been unclear, uncertain, because of the climate of fear that folks without documentation live in. That if you raise an eyebrow on the wrong day to the wrong person, your very livelihood, your own family could be at risk. And people are experiencing that here in lovely Missoula. Folks, you may have seen the article in the Missoulian and the story from Ibrahim Mena, a teacher at Missoula International School who was accosted in a grocery store and told that he should use the sponges he was buying to wipe the darkness off of his skin. That also happened here in Missoula. So these things are very real. There were ICE raids down in the Bitter Valley probably about a year ago, 14 months ago, and families were separated. Breadwinners were detained, and eventually the breadwinner and one of the families we know was deported from right here, our federal court here in town. So sometimes we think in Montana and Missoula that these things happen elsewhere. They also happen here. Last spring, if you remember, we had a really amazing, wonderful morel mushroom abundant harvest, and there were some workers who were harvesting mushrooms, and there was an ICE raid on a mushroom harvesting camp, and another gentleman was detained here in Missoula at the Missoula County Detention Center. So the other interesting thing about immigration policy is that the federal administration is pushing harder and harder for local law enforcement, whose responsibility, right, is to address local crime. Immigration, as Bob has said, is a civil issue. It is not a criminal issue. That's not what we're hearing in the media. That's not what we're hearing from the president. There's a difference between committing a crime, breaking a window, stealing a wallet, and worse, and crossing a border without documentation or overstaying a visa. But the narrative that's being spun right now is that folks who don't have legal documentation are criminals. Many are not. Their crime is not having legal documents here, but it's not a crime. So our local law enforcement is being asked to use our public resources to detain folks on behalf of the federal government in our county jail. So one of the things that Montana's for Immigrant Justice is working on is to talk to our local law enforcement, some of whom are elected officials, and to say, we don't want this to happen in our town. Another thing that has been very interesting in the last couple of years is this narrative about sanctuary and sanctuary cities. Now in the 80s, there were faith-based organizations and activists who took in Central American refugees who were fleeing violence in their countries. And because of this sensitive site sort of clearance, immigration enforcement, and actually it's an ancient practice that folks in times of war or people who are escaping violence, they can find sanctuary, right, in a church. Sometimes our immigration officials will also say they won't go into hospitals or schools, right, because those are supposed to be safe places. So in the ancient churches were safe places for folks from Central America to stay, and eventually, because of local activists, we actually got Central Americans asylum status because of what was happening in those countries that the U.S. was also very much involved in. Now, sanctuary has been turned into this bad word, right? And there was legislation in the Montana State Legislature this season against sanctuary cities, saying that any city that designated themselves a sanctuary city would be fined, would not receive federal resources. Luckily, I don't think either of those bills passed. Another interesting tidbit about those bills is that FAIR, I'm going to forget this acronym, FAIR is not a good immigrant-friendly organization, is what there is to know about FAIR. They actually came to Montana and were promoting those bills. So it's also important for us to do our research and to figure out where this kind of legislation comes from. States like Arizona are sort of this experimental ground for anti-immigrant legislation to be tested, and then sometimes it gets promoted across the rest of the country. So some things that we can do here is definitely, I was talking to Michelle before this saying, I want to do bystander training for the whole dang town. I think often as white folks we think we're going to have a heroic moment or stand with somebody. That moment may or may not come. The most important thing to me is that if I'm trying to be supportive of someone, that I do what they ask me to do. Not that I go charging ahead to be somebody's hero. Probably not going to work. So that we take our cues from the immigrant community here, and that as much as possible we promote those voices and those perspectives. Immigrants in our town are providing health care, they're providing housekeeping services in hotels, they're doing some pretty incredible stuff and really contributing to our community. So lifting that up. John Tester, our Montana Senator, is on the Senate Committee for Homeland Security. Write him a letter every dang day from Montana and say that we support immigrants in our communities and that ICE and Customs and Border Patrol are not protecting anybody. In fact, Montana's for Immigrant Justice has some material over here that talks about abolishing ICE. ICE is an organization that acts with impunity and conducts human rights abuses on a regular basis, not just at the U.S.-Mexico border, but also here in Montana and across the country. If we're going to work on a comprehensive immigration reform, I think that needs to be one of our first steps, is to abolish ICE and Customs and Border Patrol and reform those organizations in ways that do keep people safe and that respect people's human rights and basic dignity. So write John Tester, fax him, email him every day. First thing when you get up, you can brush your teeth first if you want. And then learn your own civil rights so that you can know what your rights are and that you can be ready to support somebody else if their rights are being threatened. We have some handouts over here on the table with MIJ. You're welcome to pick those up. I think that policy change is one of our very most important steps. Sometimes it can feel a little bit less sexy than doing something on the ground, but it's incredibly important, and these issues are systemic. There's something really powerful and that feels really good about being a friendly person, and we can all do that, and we should. But the way to dismantle racism and to create structures that honor and respect people's human rights is to work against the systems that are perpetuating it. The last thing I'll say that is maybe a little more radical is one of the coalitions that I am a part of, the Interfaith Immigration Coalition, is calling for people to contact Wells Fargo and JP Morgan Chase Bank to call them out on their support of private prisons. Because private prisons make a profit off of detaining immigrants. And we don't think that that's the way for anybody to be making a living, for anybody to be making a profit by imprisoning other people, especially other people who are innocent of any crime. So if you bank at Wells Fargo or Chase, maybe you want to go bank at the Federal Credit Union, and maybe you want to write a letter to a president or have a chat with your teller the next time you go to do banking in person and tell them what you think about this. There's lots and lots of information online. United We Dream is an incredible youth-led organization of immigrant youth supporting DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. They're amazing. Follow everything they do online. They do a lot of Facebook Live stuff. That's great. I also encourage you to take a look at UndocuBlack. Oftentimes when we're talking about folks who are undocumented, we have this picture of a Latino immigrant. UndocuBlack does some great work on the intersectionality of African American identity and immigration status or non-status. They're also on Instagram and Facebook and really great to follow. If you want to get into the legal piece of it, CLINIC is the Catholic Legal Immigration Network, another acronym I can't quite remember. They also have up-to-date, really great information online that's helpful to follow.
Just as Laura and Jen and everybody has said, there are things that we can do locally, hold local officials accountable for local actions. You all probably may recall this, but when they built the new big county detention facility, the jail here, we got a bunch of federal funds for that. It was not a no strings attached federal funding. The county detention facility maintains at least 5 and sometimes more beds, always open for people who are brought in by federal law enforcement, usually the U.S. Marshals Service. Sometimes it's been ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement. And you look these people up online, you can go to the jail roster, and it lists everybody and the charges and who the arresting officer was. You just see fed, hold, and charges unspecified. So we've had some meetings through MIJ with Sheriff McDermott, with the county commissioners, with the mayor, with city council members, asking what they really know about these people who are on federal hold in our jail right here in our town. Do you know what the charges are? Oh, we don't really need to know those charges. You don't need to know the charges of a person who's in your jail? I mean, is that safe, first of all, for that person? Is it safe for the rest of the community of inmates? And second, what if they're in on a civil immigration violation? They overstayed a visa, they get put into removal proceedings, and now they're on their way to immigration court in Spokane or somewhere, and then on their way out of the United States. But in the meantime, they're being held in jail for a civil violation. That, friends and neighbors, is a civil rights violation. That violates the United States Constitution. And if our local government is participating in those actions, then they are accountable. They are liable. Missoula is a good community. I love Missoula, and we have some thoughtful leaders. But Missoula is not a sanctuary city, and can't see that happening anytime soon. Missoula, though, so far, has refused to sign what's called a 287G agreement under the Immigration and Naturalization Act, the INA 287G. That's a way that ICE and federal agents can deputize local law enforcement. Not just law enforcement, people behind the desk who are granting a trailer license that you go into the DMV and you pay your money and sign your name. There are places that have signed these 287G agreements with ICE where folks giving out trailers at the DMV look at people's ID and look at them, racially profile, and say, ICE, I think this person is undocumented, come get them. Well, first of all, the United States law does not grant local law enforcement the authority to enforce federal law. And even these 287G agreements where they get like 1 week of training in federal immigration law, so you too can be an immigration enforcement official, even though you're just writing permits for trailers, or you're a cop on the beat. Having that in the way and exposing your local government to the potential risk resulting from civil rights violations for racial profiling, it's just not worth it. And Missoula has not signed a 287G agreement, but these questions were never finally decided. So let's make sure to keep the pressure on our local representatives to do the right things for immigrants in our communities, which includes refusing to cooperate with ICE and sign a 287G agreement, and finding out what the charges are, specific charges are, for each person that's held in detention by our community.
Thank you guys so much for sharing that. I think that they were able to give you guys quite a few different action items, and a few of them will start at these tables over here, it sounds like. So I hope that you guys get engaged in that way. There was something mentioned earlier about ways to, like, one of the most basic levels of supporting immigrants in our community, and that started with being friendly and, you know, sitting by someone on the bus engaging in a conversation. What other ways do you guys see community members supporting you guys specifically? We got to hear a lot about the legal aspect, ways to advocate, but how can we, as, you know, concerned citizens or people who want to support you in this community as well, how can we help you guys? What does that look like for you? In a way that's not tokenizing you or, you know, singling you out on bus saying, like, now we're going to talk about your whole life. In what ways can we be supportive and kind of be there for you and create those connections without there being a tokenization?
Okay, to me myself, what I can say is that, you know, okay, most of our jobs, if it would be better for jobs, if you can hire some applicants and just refugees to those jobs, so that they can see that refugees, they are also people. They can do things that we are doing. According to my place where I stay, we stay with white people. I think so they are starting now understand what refugees they have and what they can do. They can do something that can also American people they can do. Like I told you, we are only like where I work at St. Patrick, we are only like 3 refugees. And then they really appreciate about how they will work. Because like this they will say that, I don't know, if you don't manage to work this job, it seems like you can't work. I said, yes, because I've never worked before, so it will be very difficult for me. But at this moment, I can see they are really appreciative. They say that, okay, so you can do better for that. Yes, because some of the companies and some other places, they are very scared of that thing. They say, oh, these people, we don't know their background, we don't know anything about them. So how come can you hire somebody, you know? And then you want you people who knows how refugees they do, how refugees they can do something. If you can help us to tell those people that these people, they can do better things, they can help us, they can do that. We really appreciate the holiday. Yes, thank you very much for that. They have hired a lot of refugees at that place, and then we can see they are saying, yes, this is the only year that they have managed to do their work very good. So we really appreciate, and then we are asking if they can hire a lot of refugees in other companies. Yeah.
According to me, I just want to ask the immigration officer who is here, because he's the head of the government, continue to support ERC, because also through ERC have many problems, because he's the one who manages the refugees, and you know the problem of refugees. Most of us, we don't know English, are the big challenges we have here, but with our skills we can do. So now, if it could be possible to continue to support ERC, maybe we can open some practice schools, which doesn't need more English to speak. So we can improve our skills maybe. And I myself often say refugees, they are very hard to work, because no way we have hired a refugee and then they give TRC reporters, those guys who are just bringers, they don't know how, they are not hard work. They can just send the report, those guys, they don't know English, but to give the report that they are not hard worker, I've never heard that. So now, we are human beings, the things which you can do, me too, I can be able to do it. But, according to the language, if I can speak my language, you to give the challenge, you to speak my language, you can't. That's only the difference. And for that, continue to support ERC, because it's ERC who manage all of those problems. And whether you can find the problems through the refugees, and where they came to you and say, guys, or my boss, I have a project open for my people which I manage, so that maybe tomorrow they can help for those communities to develop our community, because this community is for us, all of us, because we are living here. Don't think about those people that are just fighting, they are just coming, but no, forget about that. We have to develop those communities. We have the kids, tomorrow they need jobs, they need to become maybe a minister, they need to become maybe a mayor of this state. We have to start work to develop this community. So that's why continue to support ERC for everything he could ask, because he is our manager through your government. Thank you very much.
Okay, my friends have said a lot, but me, I'm going to add, which we need from you is advocacy. We need you to tell people that we are here. Because most of the people do not know that the refugee is here. They read when we met in the street, they may think that those are immigrants. As he said, we have come forever. We never go back again to Africa. Before to come, we have to say that I will never go to my country. It means we will be taken to live all of your life there. So what we need to have access to Missoula newspaper, Missoula television, so that we can talk to the whole community, because they know if those who are not here, maybe in the evening they will be following TV. Tomorrow they can handle in Missoula newspaper. They can read something on the newspaper. So that if you can help us to have access to Missoula newspaper, Missoula television, that will help us a lot. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate it. And we're going to just open up the last few moments here. If anyone does have any questions or comments that they want to share, this can only go so far.
Thank you all very much. I have a question about the suggestion to email Tester about the situation. So you didn't mention the other two members of our delegation, but I was wondering if it would help to copy them or even send them their own individual email, also the local, and then maybe put it in the letters to the editor.
All of the above.
Okay.
So,
Can I ask another question?
go ahead.
I think I understood you to say that 25 million out of 65 million of displaced persons are refugees. What's the difference between the two status?
Yeah. So there are many displaced people in the world, but only a certain percentage get refugee status. So some of that is due to the fact of the international definition of a refugee and what that means. So the international definition of a refugee is someone who has had to flee their home country because of persecution or fear of persecution, usually because of race, ethnicity, religion, or member of a particular social group. And they, as Joelle was mentioning, and they cannot return to their home country. So there are a lot of people that are internally displaced within their home countries that are also displaced and maybe fleeing conflict, but because of that international definition of a refugee being that you cannot be in your home country, you must have fled and not be able to return home due to that fear. That's the difference there. So there's millions of other people that are displaced, but it's usually within their own countries. And then the United Nations will, decide, and I'm not sure exactly, there are priority areas, but once someone does flee and is able to register with the United Nations as a refugee, then they're prioritized. So usually refugees that are coming to the U.S. are the most vulnerable out of that group, and they're usually women and children, women who've experienced gender-based violence or sexual violence.
Any other questions?
On the green card issue, I think you said there was 110,000 a year waiting to be processed. There's only 30,000 being processed. So what's that doing to the ongoing ability for people to get citizenship and other? What's their situation during that long wait time in green card status?
Well, they're actually, when I was talking about 24,000, that was just one category that is quota limited for green cards. There are multiple categories that are quota limited on family-based and work-based and other. And so there are literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people waiting a long time for green card processing. Now, if you're a family member, say it's a family-based, you're petitioning for your brother or sister. Now that's one that is extremely low quota limited and also quota specific to certain countries. They say, well, way too many people from Mexico and Philippines have taken advantage of this in past years, so we're going to put their quota way down low. But we're not going to limit the numbers from European countries, once again, race-based. But say your relative is in a foreign country, and you've made this filing for your brother or sister. What do they do in the meantime? They can't come to the United States. They can't even come to the United States on a visitor visa once you've filed an immigrant visa application for them, because when you enter the United States,